Hi, I'm Randall Tharp of St. Joe Beach, Florida, and welcome to Michiana Outdoors. Today I want to talk with you a little bit about jig fishing. I'm kind of an old school jig fisherman. I learned the technique in Alabama, but I want to discuss some of my jigs and some of my theories about jig fishing that I think will help you guys catch some more bass. This is my signature series 4x4 bass jig. I just used this jig last week to win the Bassmaster Open at Ross Barnett, and I fish this exclusively around docks. But some of the key features of this jig, which I feel like make a difference, is it's got a keel-shaped bottom, which allows me to skip this jig really well. You know, a lot of the rounder shapes, they just don't glide across the water right. The line tie on this jig is semi-recessed, which I feel like makes it a little bit more weedless. But the biggest key feature is the hook and the weed guard. This is a 5/0 Gamakatsu hook. It's a black nickel flat eye hook, which I believe I've been putting this hook in my jig for years. And the angle of the weed guard on any jig is crucial. A lot of them you'll see tilted up like at this angle. I want my weed guard just about 1/8 of an inch right above the hook point, which I feel like increases your hookup percentage. And another key feature of this jig, for a lot of guys like to run a rage crawl or a grub, something with a lot of action. It's got a built-in keeper here if that's what you prefer. My preference 90% of the time is just an old school. This is a Zoom Big Salty Green Pumpkin chunk, and I feel like the benefits of using this chunk, it's big and it's bulky, which I think a big bass likes. When a big bass goes to inhale the bait, I think this gives you a higher hookup percentage just because it's so big and bulky. When this jig is falling and he opens his mouth, I mean, he sucks this big chunk in, and he's got that hook point in his mouth right where you want it. One of the other modifications that I do to this jig is when I'm using this big salty chunk, is I put some heat shrink right on the hook shank, and you can see how I did it there. And this allows, when I skip this bait, if you don't have this heat shrink on here, this chunk will run up on the jig like that, and it messes your presentation up, and it's not real efficient. I mean, when you're skipping a jig, it's bouncing across the top of the water, and there's no way to avoid that. But if you put this heat shrink on there, it holds that chunk in place. So when it finally does fall, it falls natural and looks lifelike to the bass, and you'll definitely get more bites. But this is my jig, Randall Tharp Signature Series Golden Crawl, which is my favorite color. If you guys will give some of these tips a try, you'll catch a lot more bass.